Hey there, Wake Church. My name is Aubrey. Thank you for being with us today. And you picked a good day to be here, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, maybe you're watching with some friends, maybe you're watching back later because somebody shared this with you. Today is a good day because I'm continuing our series. I guess it's a series, but really more of just my heart and what God is doing in Wake Church. We call it the State of Wake. And so if you missed the first week last week, a lot of last week was the why. What is God doing as we're coming out of this pandemic, and we've learned a lot, and we've been online, and church looks different and life looks different. What has God been doing in Wake Church, and where is it that we were headed? And so you can check that out on our YouTube channel. Go and revisit that. In fact, this message will be available as well if you want to revisit it or share it on our YouTube. As soon as this service is over, it's available also on our audio podcast. But go listen to that one. And today, that was a lot of the why. And today I want to talk a little bit more why, but also just some nuts and bolts of some things that we're rolling out into response of what we feel like God has done through us in these last 9 months. Now, I want you to hear something. Really, two statements that I want you to hear. The first statement is this, and I said this last week, that Wake Church is in a better place now than it was 9 months ago. And I know some of you are like, what? How can it? We haven't had a service in 48 weeks or whatever it is. We've been online all this time. How can we be in a better place? Because God has been clarifying and honing in who we are and what he has called us to do. Now, the other thing that I want you to hear as the pastors, I know things look different, and that's not just church. That's life in general, and which can make it worse because you're like, well, church looks different. I just need something to be the same. But let me tell you this. God is not changing what he's called us to do. The vision has not changed, but he has brought clarity and a greater understanding to the vision that he has given us. So where we're headed is not abandoning what we started with. It's like, where it started and how it's going. We are progressing. We are taking steps. We're 3 years old, and think about a baby. A baby learns to walk and things start to develop and you start to talk and you start to do all these things. Well, we are growing and maturing into what it is that God has called us to do. So kind of just a quick recap. The reason I say that Wake Church is in a better place than we were 9 months ago is because he's cooking us up. I know it feels like we've been hidden. I know it feels like things aren't normal, but the reality is God has put us in the oven for a while and he's cooking us up. He's letting all the juices soak in. He's getting us just at the right tenderness because he is about to let the timer go off and Wake Church is going to come out and we're going to love God and love people and impact the community like we couldn't have 9 months ago if we hadn't have gone through the season that we're coming out of, okay? So I know it feels different, but he's cooking us up for something. He stuck us in the oven and said, I got to get you just right so that you can do what I've called you to do. Now, here's something I said that I wanted to challenge you with. What God is cooking us up for is not going to look like what we know. Especially if you're watching in Oklahoma, Texas, in the Midwest, we have a very, what we think, clear picture of what church should look like. And for most of us, church is Sunday morning. And so I want you to understand from the get-go that what God has called us to do and what he's cooking us up for is not going to look like what we know. In fact, I would say that I think what God is about to do is going to be less centralized around a service. It's like he's kind of decentralizing us from Sunday morning being God time. That was never his intention. It was never intended that following Jesus was a weekly rhythm on Sunday morning. God's intention was always that it was a daily rhythm of walking with him. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But he's decentralizing the service. Now, I love corporate worship. We're hopeful to bring Wake Person back for Easter. That's what we're shooting for. And the way things look, it looks like that's going to be a reality, okay? So we're hopeful for that. We're not doing away with it, okay? That is something that I miss, that I love, and I can't wait until we do it again. But it's not, we have built church and following Jesus around Sunday morning. And it's less about that and it's more about relationships. I believe that what God is cooking us up for is not going to be centered around a service. It's going to be centered around relationships. So the challenge for you and I, especially for those of you, maybe you're on a coast. I lived in Miami, Florida for 6 years, and there's not this concept of church necessarily in Miami, Florida. It's a little bit different because you actually have kids whose grandma hasn't been praying for them. Like they're removed from church. It's not part of their life. But here in Oklahoma, we all have this mindset of what it's supposed to be. And here's what I want you to hear is that we have to expand our mindset of what experiencing God is. Listen, if the goal is for you and I to experience God, to walk with God, what I think many of us have done have limited experiencing God to a service, to a Sunday morning, to when the band sings that perfect song, to when the preacher says something that actually speaks to me. That's what we've limited experiencing God. And what I'm challenging you to do is to expand your mindset of what experiencing God could be. Maybe there's more to following Jesus than Sunday morning. And I'm going to tell you, as Wake Church, what God is cooking us up for and why it's looked so different and He has brought clarity to, it's not going to be centralized around a service. It's going to be centralized around relationships. Now, part of what started this whole thing for me is throughout the last 9 months, I've just had countless conversations with people that have been so life-giving, or I say life-giving, but it's been like a godly experience, like a spiritual experience. Like I'd have a conversation with somebody and I'd go home and I'd tell my wife and be like, honey, like I felt God more in that conversation than I felt in probably 99% of church services I've been to. And again, we're going to have Wake in person. That's part of where we're headed. But I want you to hear this part. I'm trying to expand your mindset to this part. And that just happened over and over and over. And some of these conversations happened at basketball courts. Some of these conversations happened over coffee. Some of these conversations happened over brunch. Some of these conversations were just people saying, hey, I don't go to your church, but I've listened to your podcast and ask a question. So I'm having these conversations where I'm experiencing God, and it's been very outside of what I thought experiencing God was. And so I start to think like, well, I can't limit experiencing God to just a Sunday morning. And so I started to think. And I thought, well, maybe there's more to this thing, that maybe Christians are a little bit undercooked if we are living our lives limiting experiencing God to a service. That maybe there's this relational piece that we have been missing. And what's cool, and this is what's really awesome, is that that's our vision. The vision of Wake Church is to love God, to love people, and to impact the community. Well, if you think about it, love God and love people is all about what? Relationships. Let me show you this, because this is where God is taking us. Again, the vision hasn't changed. He's just bringing clarity to it. And what He's doing is He's cooking us up for a new, fresh way, for a new move of God, okay? So check this out. Our vision here at Wake Church is to love God and to love people, okay? So what I'm challenging you to do is to expand your mindset of what experiencing God is, okay? So here's you. You're really skinny. All right, here's your heart or your spirit. Okay, so watch this. It's all about relationship. I said what God is doing is not going to be centered around a service, and we should experience God in services. We will. We're going to have incredible services, but that's just part of following Jesus, okay? So watch this. It's all about relationship. Loving God is what? A personal relationship with God, okay? Now listen, I want to be very clear about something. Your personal relationship with God is not my responsibility or anybody else's responsibility. It is your responsibility, okay? That's why so many Christians have fallen away through this pandemic, is because we took a service away and you've built your life and putting the responsibility of personal relationship with God on somebody else. That is your responsibility. All right. So love God. I'm talking about experiencing God through relationship. The most crucial way that you can experience God through relationship is actually God speaking to you. Did you know that God can speak to you? Did you know that God wants to meet with you daily, not just in a service? You don't have to hear, hopefully my words are inspiring you, but you can hear the word of God for yourself. You can ask God questions without having a preacher or a podcast having to answer those questions for you. He wants to speak to you. So one of the crucial ways, and the most important way to experience God, is through the relationship of loving God, of a personal relationship with God, walking in his spirit and him speaking to you. And that's what he does. He speaks his word to your spirit. Okay. Now, here's a piece that this is where I really want us to kind of focus in on, because we would all kind of agree, yeah, a personal relationship. Whether you have a personal relationship, like a thriving, cultivating personal relationship with God or not, I don't know. But we would all, for the most part, agree. You know, we may not really believe that he speaks to us, but we would agree, yes, I should have a personal relationship with God. Okay? Now, here's the other piece that I kind of want to bring your attention to, and this is what I have experienced over the last 9 months. So I've got other people, all right? And what's happened that's been very interesting, that has expanded my mindset, is that the God in other people speaks to the God in me. And so actually, I am having a godly experience with other people, which is what? Love people. Love God is a personal relationship. Loving people is having meaningful relationships and being intentional, because that is part of experiencing God. It's not just a service. I'm talking about, and when I say I've had these conversations, it's not like, oh, hey, buddy, slap a high five and walk out of church. Like, I've had, people haven't actually done this, but it's what it felt like. Somebody like grabbed me. It felt like they were grabbing my shirt and saying, pull it together, Aubrey. And those are some of the most spiritual moments. Let me fix my shirt here. Those are some of the most spiritual moments I've had during this time, because it's meaningful relationship where the God in somebody is speaking to the God in me, and I'm experiencing God sometimes even greater way than I would in a service, even when they're singing my favorite song. And so God is clarifying this vision of loving God. And this has nothing to do with the service. We're going to do services, but it has everything to do with relationship, personal relationship with God, and then meaningful relationships with other people. Now, I'll say this too. Your meaningful relationships with other people ultimately are your responsibility, but this is somewhere that the church can help. Okay, and that's part of what God has clarified as we come back from this and as we come out of the oven, and he's been cooking us up for. And that's part of some of the stuff that I wrote down in 2016 when I still lived in Miami, Florida. God is bringing clarity, because some of that is that we want to cultivate this culture. We want to cultivate meaningful relationships. I think that if you are just looking to a service to experience God, and that is your idea of meaningful relationship, you're missing a huge part in walking with Jesus, because the God in people speaks to you when you allow him to, okay? And so that's part of what we're doing, and it's expanding our mindset of how we experience God. And so Hebrews chapter 10, I read this verse to you. It says, discover creative ways to encourage others and to motivate them toward acts of compassion. You might remember this from last week. Doing beautiful works as expressions of what? Love. So love God, love people. It's these relationships become an expression of love. This is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together, as some have formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently, eager to encourage and urge each other onward as we anticipate that day dawning. Now, here's what most of us hear, either because we've been taught this or it's just what we know. What most of us hear when we hear that verse is, well, we need to go to church more often. We need to have more services. Because it says, do not forsake the gathering. And you've got preachers everywhere right now saying, do not forsake the gathering. In other words, they're saying, get your butt to church is what and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, you want to be challenged. It says, in fact, we should be getting together more frequently. But I want to expand your mindset of experiencing God. Of the point of these gatherings is to experience God together, is to experience God. And so maybe gathering is more than just a service. Maybe gathering has something to do with you getting with other people. Maybe gathering is not just a corporate worship time, but an honest conversation with friends around the table. Maybe it's eating dinner together and you guys talking about goals for parenting. You can experience God in those moments. So when I see this, I don't see just a service. In fact, if you study the first church, most of their time, they did gather corporately, but most of their time was spent eating together. They were getting together daily and eating together and talking about what Paul was preaching or Peter was preaching and talking about all these different things. And they would get together and eat together and the kids would play. And they were experiencing God within this community that wasn't limited to a service, because the reality is the services back in those days didn't look like the services that we have today. You would not have gone to a church back in the day because they had an incredible kids ministry like you pick them today, okay? There's more to gathering. Now, the importance is it says, do not forsake gathering. And I agree wholeheartedly with that, okay? I agree that many people have, as this would say, they've forsaken gathering with other people, and some of that's the pandemic, and some of that is being smart, and I don't even want to get up into that because that's your personal beliefs or preferences. But listen, do not forsake gathering. If gathering is your family being together, then gather. But be intentional about gathering in order to experience God. And gathering does not have to be a service. You can gather with your family and experience God together. All right, so we've got to expand our mindset of what experiencing God looks like. We've got to expand our mindset of what gathering looks like. So what does that mean for Wake Church? Well, something that we're going to roll out in March is something new. It's called Wake Home and Wake Neighborhoods, okay? What is Wake Home and what is Wake Neighborhood? We believe wholeheartedly that you should not forsake gathering, okay? We also believe wholeheartedly that gathering is not just a corporate worship time. Again, those are going to come back. We're hoping in Easter we can launch that one time a month, Wake in person. But in the meantime, it's time for you to start gathering again. It's time for you to be experiencing God with the God in people speaking to you through meaningful relationship. It's time for you to start gathering again, to love God and to love people. Okay? And so that's what Wake Home and that's what Wake Neighborhood is. What is Wake Home? I'll tell you the goal. If I had to put a statement of the win for Wake Home and Wake Neighborhood, it would be this love people part of our vision. It would be that you would experience God through meaningful relationships. I just believe it's a piece that many Christians are missing because we've relied on services or corporate gatherings, okay? And so Wake Home and Wake Neighborhoods are going to be a way for us to experience God together and have meaningful relationship. And I believe that these are actually going to be, for some of you, more powerful than a service has been for you in the past, okay? So what is Wake Home? One, Wake Home, the reason we're doing this, Wake Home would be a single unit or family, okay? So it would be like maybe you're a single college student and you're watching by yourself, or my family watching together with my wife and my two kids, where we'll watch Wake Kids at 9:45, and then we'll watch we'll watch Wake online, the adult service together, okay? That would be a Wake home. Now, we realize that some of you still prefer not to be around people, that you prefer to stay at home until this thing clears, and we completely respect that. But I would encourage you, do not forsake the gathering, okay? You should, as a Christ follower, you need to gather, even if that's your family or even if that's just you sitting there by yourself. You need to build routine of putting yourself in an environment to experience God, okay? Now you'll hear the argument of, well, if I can have a personal relationship with God, then I don't need Wake Home. You need community, okay? And doing things on your own, it's like, that would be like me saying that my job is worthless as a pastor. It's not, because there's people that God has called to be a part of this family that I'm to inspire. I'm not God to you. You don't have to hear my words to hear God, but there are times where I inspire or lead or guide or direct, okay? So you still need that. So that's what Wake Home is. And really the encouragement I would have for you is to be consistent. So many of us have gotten so lazy with gathering and being intentional about experiencing God. So Wake Home is a single unit, all right? And again, if you're not comfortable gathering with other people, it's just your family, and maybe it's Wake Kids together, that's great. But we want to know that you are committing to be a part of a family. I know it looks different and I know it's wild, but you as a Christ follower, you need to commit to experiencing God through relationship, okay? So if you are Wake Home and you say, well, I'm on every Sunday already, Aubrey, great. We want to know. We want to know that you're watching. For some of you, it's just going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm already doing that. For some of you, it's going to be, oh, man, I really need to commit to this and not forsake the gathering. I've gotten a little bit lazy. Now, listen, I don't care if you watch in your pajamas. I don't care if you eat brunch while you're doing it. But we've got to start to gather again and begin to experience God. And you will be amazed, even if it's just a family, okay? Maybe it's a brother and a sister. You will be amazed at the conversations that can happen out of watching something together. So that's Wake Home, okay? Again, the big thing about Wake Home, it's be consistent. Every Sunday I'm on, okay? I'm watching this, all right? And building that routine of gathering together back into your life. That's Wake Home, all right? If you're interested in a Wake Home, I'll tell you this. If you need to register your home or you're like, I need to commit to this or I already watch, text HOME to 405-645-7899. Text HOME to 405-645-7899, and we'll ask you your questions and get you squared away there, okay? So that's Wake Home, and I'm going to give you what that's going to look like, okay, at the end. The next one I want to talk about is Wake Neighborhood. So Wake Neighborhood makes sense, would be multiple homes getting together. So really, it's church happening at home. And you're like, well, Aubrey, it's not a service. You can't do that. No, yes, you can. Loving God and loving people. When we get together, even if it's you and another family, it doesn't have to be big. When we get together, the God in us spurs each other on to where we experience God even outside of a service. And that's what a Wake Neighborhood is. It's multiple homes getting together. Now listen, we don't want to put too many restrictions on this. The only thing that we will ask you to do as a Wake Neighborhood or as a Wake Home is to watch the message together and then discuss the discussion questions. The rest is completely up to you. In the past, we've put time limits on stuff. I don't care how long you hang out because I believe that we can experience God through the power of meaningful relationships. Look, the first church, they ate. So eat together. Eat together, and the only thing we ask is you have an intentional time of taking in teaching and discussing spiritual things together, okay? And we'll provide all that. We'll have it available online where you can watch it on YouTube whenever you choose. It doesn't have to be Sunday, whenever. But we want you to be a part of a neighborhood. Now, I personally would encourage you to be a part of a neighborhood. Okay, if you're in a place where maybe we have people that watch from other states, and maybe you're like, well, I don't know if there's anybody else. I might be the only Wake Home in my state. I get that. Or if you're like, hey, we don't really want to be around a lot of people right now, I get that. Okay, be a Wake Home, commit, build that routine, gather with us, okay? But listen, Wake Neighborhoods, we want you to begin to build relationships, and it's built around this message and this content that we put out, and we're starting to think about you and how it can be more conversational instead of just preachy, okay? And the idea is that we have these conversations together. Now, one of the things that really excites me about Wake Neighborhoods specifically is this is an opportunity for us to reach people. Let me tell you this. Some of the conversations that I have had in this last 9 months are with people who will not step foot into church, but are more spiritual than some Christians. There are people that you are surrounded with that are hungry. They are hungry for the things of God. They are hungry to experience God, but maybe they've had a bad experience at church, or maybe they're just, they were done wrong by a Christian who was meaner than somebody who's a drug addict. I don't know. Everybody's had bad experiences, but there are people that will step foot into your Wake neighborhood and engage in spiritual things and experience God with you that would never step foot into a church. And so I know of one Wake neighborhood that's going to happen, and it's 3 families, and only one of them goes to our church. And they were excited when I told them about what we're doing, because they said, well, we're already doing that. They won't come to church, but they're coming over, and we're having these conversations about spiritual things, but they'll never come to church. And I love this, because that Wake neighborhood is engaging people in experiencing God, and I know it looks different, and I know it expands our mindset, but the goal is for people to experience God, right? And so it is an opportunity for you to invite people, eat, hang out. It doesn't have to be heavy. In fact, we've even said that, hey, worship can be optional. Some of you guys just want to eat. I know there's one Wake neighborhood. You guys eat every single time. And you're going to eat some of these have already been going. We've kind of been focus testing. But you're going to eat every single time. And that's good. So you know what? If you just want to take the intentional time to watch a message and you don't want to watch the whole service, I'm good with that, okay? The goal is for people to experience God through relationships. And so Wake Home, that's what that is a single unit. Maybe it's just you and your family. And it may look like this, it may look like, hey, you're just by yourselves as a Wake Home with your family 2 weeks, and then 1 week you're at a Wake neighborhood where you're gathering with people, and then maybe that 4th week, Wake in person is going, and you're gathering with everybody for corporate worship, okay? I'm not trying to get legalistic. I'm just telling you, I have experienced our vision in a new way. When it comes to loving people, that we can experience God through meaningful relationship. And that is what God is calling us to do, and that's what we're going to do. So engage. Expand your mindset. Get past what you know and let God do something new in your life. If you're interested in a Wake neighborhood, here's what I want you to do. You can text JOIN. If you're like, man, I'd like to join a Wake neighborhood as we roll these out in March. Let us know. You can text JOIN to 405-645-7899. Again, that's JOIN to 405-645-7899. If you're interested in hosting a neighborhood, like you're like, hey, I'd love to have some people at my house. We can eat together, or summer rolls around. I have a pool. The kids could swim. It'll be awesome. If you're interested in hosting, text HOST, HOST, to 405-645-7899. And again, if you're a home that's already watching, or you're like, man, I need to be consistent and build this routine of gathering back into my family, text HOME to 405-645-7899. So that's a little bit of where we're headed. In March, we want to roll these out and start gathering and experiencing God together. And these are just really just smaller gatherings of experiencing God. And again, Wake in Person is going to be a big part of that. Our goal is one time per month, and we're hoping we bring that back for our Easter service, which we're super excited about. Keep praying that everything keeps going in the right direction. Listen, God's cooking us up, Wake Church. It looks different. It feels different, but it feels good. The vision hasn't changed. God has just brought clarity to what he's called us to do. And I want to encourage you to be a part. I want to encourage you to engage. I want to encourage you to jump into this movement. See, we almost named Wake Church Movement Church because I said, you know what? I don't really want a church. I want a movement where people are doing something that is affecting, and it's not built around religion and duty and all this stuff. It's built around God's doing something in our hearts, and we're excited about it. And this is a movement. So jump into the movement, engage in the movement, and watch what God wants to do in you and through you. Maybe you're watching and you live out of state. Be awake home. Shoot, maybe be Awake Neighborhood and start inviting people to come check it out with you. We believe God's going to do some miraculous things through the vision that he's given us of loving God, of loving people, and impacting the community. Let me pray for you. Father, I love you so much. Thank you for these wonderful people that are watching right now, God. Thank you that even though it's been a challenging last year, Father, that you love us so much that you won't leave us where we're at. That you didn't allow us as a church to just sit and hope and wait, but you brought clarity to what you've called us to do, and you've brought energy to a mission that you've already given us, God, and you've cooked us up for this moment, Father, to do something significant here in Norman and the surrounding communities, to the states that are represented right now, Father. That's what's crazy about this whole thing, God, is that through online and what you've allowed us to do these last 9 months, the influence of what you want to do has expanded further than we ever could have dreamed, Father. So, Lord, I pray for every person that's watching. I just pray that you would stir something inside of us, God. Father, that we would get past our mindset of what we know or what we think it should be, and that we would follow the fire that is burning in our spirit right now, that excitement that, yeah, this is a little different. Yeah, this is a little crazy, but this could be really awesome. God, I pray that we follow that unction in our spirit right now, Lord. And that we line up our commitments with what our spirit is telling us, Father. Lord, I pray that I just release your presence right now, Father. Not that it needs my release, but I just pray, God, that as people begin to gather, as they're watching right now, that we would get past seeing a revival and a service, Father, but that we would begin to see you moving in incredible ways right in the middle of living rooms, God. That we would begin to see you move in incredible ways, Father, as these Wake homes gather in families, that children would give their life to you, that children would be marked for the rest of their lives because of experiences with your presence, God, happening right in living rooms, as a family, as friends and family, and meaningful relationships, that Wake neighborhoods, God, we would begin to see you move in incredible ways that we only thought could happen in a service, but it's happening right there in houses and coffee shops, that people would begin to experience God through the power of loving people, of the power of relationships, Father. We love you. We praise you. It's in your mighty name. And everybody said, amen, amen. Well, hey, I want to dismiss you with our vision. It's love God, love people, and impact the community. Hey, if today helped you, would you share it? Again, this message is now available on YouTube. It's also available on our audio podcast. And we'll put those links in the comments so you can go find those. But share this, man. If you're excited, use this as an invite to invite somebody or challenge or inspire. Maybe you know somebody who's like, man, I'm sick of church. Maybe this would excite them about being a part of a community. Share it. Help us spread the message of what God is doing in Wake Church. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Also, like this. If you're on YouTube, like it. If you're on Facebook, like that. That helps us get in front of more people and spread the message that God has given us here at Wake Church. Well, let's dismiss with our vision. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Love God, love people, and impact the community. Hey, I love you. We'll see you later.